don't let fear rule, because for me, fear holds me back, and fear is the enemy. The enemy doesn't want you to have these meetings. And, we have a couple of family members that I would say are not deep in their faith. And yet, let me just read you one of the definitions about love. So one of our values is love. It says provide unconditional grace, compassion, gratitude for others and ourselves, no matter what. See what God sees in us. Created that definition. I didn't create it. And so even though, are they going to church on a regular basis? Are they reading the Bible? No. He was present. And so for me, even this call, it's like, I want to get this perfect. And you and I prayed beforehand, and we asked the Holy Spirit to come in and be here. And for me, I felt that.
Hey, Uncommon Leaders, welcome back. This is the Uncommon Leader Podcast, and I'm your host, John Gallagher. I've got a guest coming back on for the fourth time with us today. We've talked about leadership in the past. We've talked about growing your business. And most recently on the episode, which doesn't seem possible 2 years ago, we talked about Tom's book with his daughter, Christine, back on episode 122. So here we are somewhere in the neighborhood of episode 230, ultimately to talk about what's going to come across, I think, is a pretty deep topic, but a very important topic as we go through this. We're going to dive into the term family meeting and what that means. Ultimately, as business leaders that many of you listen in, or those who are in the workplace, in the marketplace, companies spend hundreds of thousands of hours developing their vision, developing their mission and values, strategic plans. And yet as individual leaders with our families, which is really where we want to have the most impact if we dive into it, we don't spend the time doing that as a family. So this family meeting is not about really the dinner table and asking how your day went. This family meeting concept that we're talking about is a retreat ultimately that as families, what's the impact we want to leave as a legacy? So I'm excited about the conversation today. Tom and I have been prepping. I know you're going to enjoy it. So Tom Carmazzi, welcome back for the fourth time. Just so you know, the fifth time gets you the robe, gets you the smoking jacket. So you're going to have to come on back. But how you doing today, friend?
Oh, yeah. You said that after the third time. Yeah.
Yeah,
I see
right.
how this works.
Yep, absolutely. So,
John, it's great to be here. Thank you.
Good. Yeah, I'm glad you're here. And I know this is going to be a great conversation today. Typical, we kind of do these questions, fire them off one at a time, but I think it's going to be a great conversation going back and forth with some of the experiences that we have and some of the things that we've been putting together over the past couple of years, ultimately on our journey as men of God and as brothers to impact for the kingdom. The topic, again, back is to this family meeting concept. And we think about the reason for action of this, or why this is such an important topic. You and I, in our preparations, we talked about mortality, really, not just for us, but what was happening in the lives of our friends and family. You had a friend who died suddenly at the age of 69, which, as we continue to age, we see how young that is. In the past year, just over a year, I've lost both my father and my father-in-law in the last year. So we see that mortality that exists today. And I wonder, as you think about that, how has that even deepened or strengthened kind of your resolve to make a difference inside the kingdom, to make a difference for Legacy, not even in the family impact side, but just, your feeling about making a difference?
Well, John, those are always very touching moments. And for me, I don't know how many times I've been to those kinds of situations, those kind of services. And what I always say to myself is, gosh, life is so short. Capture the moment, capture the moment. I like to say within 24 hours, but it's probably 24 minutes. I'm back to what I was thinking before, and it's completely left me. But I would say as a result of the family meetings, I see these differently. And it's not from a judgment as they should be, they're not. It's not that. It's more of a yes and. And that what I love in those celebrations of life or funeral services, whatever you want to call them, is the heart. You see so many hearts there, and most of them are grieving, and it's like, oh my gosh, and so it's really easy for tears to flow. And usually there's a lot of colleagues which will speak or say something. You don't see so much of family members. You don't see so much of next up. In business, you plan for next up. CEO leaves, retires, up, next up, next up. And in these two specific, again, wonderful people touched countless lives. And the end was, and who's the obvious next up? What's
Right.
that obvious being carried forward that I didn't see? And it was more this individual, these individuals had tremendous personal power, just wonderful folks. And how was that who they were, who they are going to be carried forward? Not the assets, that kind of stuff. I think a lot of families do a really nice job with that.
Mm-hmm.
The opportunity is that carry forward of that family vision, the family values, who that person really was and how that disseminated through and who's carrying that forward, not to just the next generation, but generation after generation after generation. So yeah,
Absolutely.
that
And
was
I was, as you went through there's a couple, things that came to my mind. I thought about the first two rows,
yeah.
who's in those first two rows as you sit there. And generally, if you can see those individuals you want sitting in those first two rows, that's really what this family meeting is all about, because it probably has nothing to do with the business side of what we did as a leader or our secular work that was there. It's really about that legacy impact that we leave. We heard a gentleman speak before at one of the conferences we attended who said the legacy you leave is more valuable than the assets you leave. And again, I think as we continue to look at the impact that we want to have, that statement gets that much more powerful. You mentioned it, generation after generation. Building wealth is very important. It's almost like the price of admission to have that estate plan to take care of your family. And we'll talk about that a little bit as we go through this conversation. But, the power is in the generational mindset of those things that you leave behind, those stories that you leave behind with those individuals in the first two rows are going to be told. So you might as well try and generate those stories now with them. And the family meeting is one of the ways that we do that. But I wonder, like, again, the other thing you said was that within 24 hours, I'm back to my daily eating, drinking, planning. We used to call it EDP in terms of what's happening.
Yep.
Or within 24 minutes, whatever that means. And why? That's probably not a fair question. What do you believe it is in leaders that causes that? That really is, that causes us to step back way too quick before we get going again. Because that's another one of these reasons. Craig Rochelle says we change out of inspiration or out of desperation. And we generally have to run back to our jobs and get something done. Why do you think that is?
Well, just going back to change from inspiration or desperation, I'd love to break that down into percentages. Because my makeup is that it's a much higher percentage of desperation, much higher. I don't think it's 50-50 split. I don't think it's 80-20 inspiration. I just, of course, something was going on that I realized I had to change. I mean, previous times that we've met and talked, as I saw figures, I didn't see faces. And so I was always about the numbers. And it just became clearer and clearer and clearer. And one thing after another that said, I have to change. I am a manager. I'm not a leader. And I didn't have a choice. So it was desperation. It wasn't inspiration. I saw these great leaders and said I wanted to be like them because I thought I was successful. So it's the same thing here. And that with these family meetings, first off, for me, I'm working 60, 70 hours a week. I'm also giving my best hours. It's not like I'm giving those hours from midnight to 7 a.m. No, those are my best hours. And so then the time that's left after sleep, there's not a whole lot there. And so, I walk out of that heartfelt situation and my mind starts going back to kind of the eating, drinking, planning, counting, going back to the task, going back to getting things done. And the heart takes a back seat. And that's for me, when I think of inspiration, that's all about the heart. I don't intellectually go to inspiration. I just don't. And so I think about why they do that, why I do that is that, my gosh, I got a lot of stuff. Even though I'm retired, I got a lot of stuff that I'm working on. And it's not tennis and golf.
Yep.
Sometimes I wish it were,
Well,
but
and even where we've been on our growth journey the past few years, we're seeing in Scripture and our faith development as well the importance of this too. As to legacy, we've got the perfect model inside the Bible in terms of legacy and how generations are impact. But and one of the foundational pieces of Scripture that you and I have discussed as part of this process is Romans 12:2 is do not conform to the world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And so it is that inspiration is a choice. I mean, let's look, we're not trying to paint doom and gloom. That's the challenge with this topic, is it's doom and gloom when it really should be hope and, happiness in terms of when you're discussing it. But that desperation mode, look, one of two things happens. It's a sentinel event. It's a heart attack that takes someone immediately, and you haven't done any of that planning that goes on, legacy. But the second piece, and what really, as you said, in that high percentage, is a medical diagnosis that leads you to say, your mortality was just formalized in the form of, I've got 12 months to live, and so I need to make these things very important again. Where the inspirational side is, no, we're going to do this so that if that occurs, we're prepared for it. That was another one of the quotes that the gentleman at the conference that we spoke with, his name was Price Hightower. He said, this is a preparation for death. And we prepare for a lot of things, but for some reason, we don't find the inspiration to prepare for our death so that it continues on, to your point, for generations to come. So when we as leaders, back to the eating, drinking, planning part of it, hear this term family retreat, right? We immediately go somewhere in our minds, right? And what are some of the barriers that pop up immediately when we think about the family retreat or the family meeting? What are some of the barriers that popped up in your mind in doing it?
Well, so first, given my background, I've had a lot of opportunities to facilitate meetings. A lot. Probably triple digits. Meetings from an hour to 4 days. And I felt some anxiety, but for the most part, I was very, very comfortable doing it. I mean, it just actually, I got to really like it. Family scared the living daylights out of me. I mean, I was nervous. I was afraid. I kept thinking of all kinds of excuses to push it out, make sure I was really ready. Everything was going to be perfect. Had all my questions, had all my supplies. It's like, oh my gosh. And it was for me that it's going to sound corny, but this was real. I mean, these were people that I loved. And it's just crazy. It's like, I want to be that perfect dad. At the same time, I wanted to be a perfect facilitator. At the same time, I wanted to be a friend. At the same time, I wanted to be open. I wanted to be authentic. And yet I wanted to be firm. It's like, and you can imagine, it's just a sticky chocolate mess. So there was this part of perfectionism, part of who was in the room. I felt the stakes were much higher. Also, my relationship with the people in the room was not the same. Some were a little bit more tenuous or challenging than others. And so there were all of those things of what could go wrong versus what could go right. And so that was the primary difference for me. And the surprise was, given the background that I had, it's like, this is a no-brainer, until I really started slowing down and thinking just that. Who's the audience? And this is the first time that I was going to do something like this with this type of an audience. And I was scared.
Yeah, us learning about the topic when we did, our children at the time were a little bit older than maybe is the ideal time to get started. Maybe they're still in the house would be the ideal time to get started so that you have them contained, if you will. But now they're out and about. I'm like, man, it's going to be hard to get everybody together. They live so far away. And, what are they going to think when I say I want to have a family meeting? What's going to come to their minds, about me or whatever that is? And that's one of the things that ran into me is like, the kids are like, Dad, really? You want to have a 2-day meeting with the family? What are we going to talk about that whole time? And so, I had to be okay with that framework to get started, is knowing that that's probably what the first step is going to be, is there's going to be some pushback to make that happen. I was grateful that when we did do our first family meeting, it was there a little bit, but it didn't come across as strong as I thought it might, in terms of, that's me making things up to be worse than they probably are going to be anyway. That's part of my makeup and some of my thinking as well. And so you and I, we're facilitators. That's how we were brought up in the world of manufacturing and the world of leadership, is we were taught to facilitate activities. How did you have to be different in facilitating an activity like that versus facilitating a rapid improvement event or a Kaizen event with 12 members of a team in a foundry kind of?
Not take it personal. It's like when you're at work, you don't have the history. I mean, in some regards, you could say, oh, gosh, I've been working here for 15 years, but it's a different type of history, And so when things happen in those family meetings, for me, I would read so much more into it. well, this is from 7 years ago when we were on a ski trip. And so for me, it was a lot of being curious. Let it sit. Do not take it personal. Do not react. Do not pass judgment. And so a lot of this is 3x5 cards. Okay. And that these meetings, I want to get the family commenting. I want to get their ideas. And so I do a lot of question asking, and everyone replies on a 3x5 card. And so some of the information on the 3x5 cards, a little bit of an outlier, like, what? But it's just no way I can do that. There's no way I can show body language that cross my arms, look around, like, can't do that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Look at your watch and say, come on, we got to stay on task here, right? I mean,
yeah, right.
That's how we're trained.
And so if you had another card, what might that one say? You can't do that. And that was really challenging given who was in the room. So that would be what was really calling forth for me, is to be able to not take it personal. Focus on the larger objective, and that is those family vision, values, legacy, and that's not about me per se. It's about us as a family. So
yeah, I love the concept again, the 3x5s, the sticky notes. That's kind of how we're wired, and it's ingrained in us. Trying to learn something new, and yes, being prepared for the looks like, really, you want me to write this on a 3x5 card? Can't I just blurt it out or whatever it is and make it happen? So there is some structure to it. And you mentioned that even the output of these, it's not a one-time event. First of all, it's a regular review. We can talk about that a little bit too, but the output is a family vision statement, a family heritage statement. We've heard it called before as well. Might be some core values that as a family you're living by, which can be pretty powerful. The behaviors that are associated with those values. In our case, we put a scripture into each one of those core values and identified, what that really meant to us. But before you get the output, you got to go through this. Let's be tactical for a second. When folks think about this family meeting, what might the structure of one of these family meetings look like? Can they be done on a Zoom call, or what's the structure of one of those? How did it flow for you?
John, if I could back up just a little bit, and that is, so one of the things that I did is I talked to Deb, my spouse, my wife, and talked to her about doing this. I needed an advocate. I needed an ally. It couldn't just be me and, the rest of the family on the other side of the table kind of thing. Man. So Deb, she realizes, what I did at work, and this is something that I've done before. And she kind of said, this is what you do. And so I'm going to trust in that, and I'll be supportive. And it really was, I loved the support, and I didn't want to surprise her, So for me, Maxwell used to always talk about the meeting before the meeting, so I had to make sure that my spouse was on board. And then I also just kind of dropped little questions like, so what do you guys think about the family meeting in terms of, a vision or values of the family, and just like you're saying, John, I'd kind of get well, yeah, okay, but it wasn't we already have that. There was none of that kind of tone or pushback. And so that was it. Now, so structurally, I had over 2 days, 2 4-hour meetings. This was the first one. And we started out just sharing the family history, just went around the room. And you would think with your kiddos, right, that I know their history. I mean, I've lived it from birth, and it was rich. I mean, the stuff that they saw, they took in, they did, I had no clue about. Their emotions in those moments, it was wonderful. It was wonderful. So there was a real tenderness that started out with that. And again, even that, there's a way that I asked that we do it, and it was listen. Please don't interrupt while someone's sharing. Don't say, yeah, but wasn't that when? Please don't do that. Just listen and listen. When they're finished, then we can ask any clarifying, non-leading questions. And to your point, John, I had a macro 4-hour block in a given day. And yes, I did put times on stuff like this, but I let it flow. And for the most part, those times were honored. And so there's some foundational things you have to do, or I felt we had to do. There's also things like with the 3x5 cards, write 3 cards, 1 word per card that would describe your life the last 6 months. And they would fill them out and put them up there. And then so you got on this big easel page all these cards, and you just basically, Tom, tell me about busyness. And away it goes. And so just these little icebreakers, right? It's kind of like in business, they were like a requirement, and it was in essence to start the meeting. Here it felt like to start the heart. To start the heart, to start the vulnerability, to really get us in a place that felt like a family. Another one that won't surprise you, I know, or anyone else, is no technology.
Ooh.
Zero. Cannot be in the room. Cannot. I don't hear it buzzing, And I mean, so these family meetings, they're not on Zoom. They have to be face to face. They have to be face to face. Just Saturday night, Deb and I were out to dinner, and there was a family sitting right next to us. And oh my gosh, it was a sweet moment. You had, father, mother, and 3 kids, 5 devices. And the mother was playing games. It's like, holy schmoly. So anyway, there is a structure, but it's really to get a family to a place of being a family.
Hey, Uncommon Leaders. Hope you're enjoying the episode so far. I believe in doing business with people you like and trust and not just a company name. That's why a strong personal brand is essential, whether you're an entrepreneur or a leader within a company. Brand Builders Group, the folks who have been helping me refine my own personal brand, are offering a free consultation call with one of their expert brand strategists. They'll help you identify your uniqueness, craft a compelling story, and develop a step-by-step plan to elevate your impact. So head on over to coachjohngallagher.com/BBG, as in Brand Builders Group, to schedule your free call and take the first step toward building a personal brand that gets you noticed for all the right reasons. That's coachjohngallagher.com/BBG. Now, let's get back to the episode.
Yeah, that's even as you listen through, like that's the uncommon component. Back to that verse, to not conform to the world, will be transformed by the renewing your mind. Romans 12:2 is that, the conformance is, I've always got my phone with me. I just need to have it with me. The conformance is just let me blurt it out. I mean, it's easier to do that than it is to write it on a card. And the transformation ultimately requires us to do hard stuff. That's why, again, that in person, as hard as that is, especially the size of your family, is so important. So you want it to be at a nice place as well, so that you can enjoy a nice dinner while you're there, do a cookout, have some fun, almost like a vacation. But there's a focused time. For me, that really worked well in our first meeting. It was actually at our home. We brought our kids in, but it was a focused time that we were going to, in essence, step away from the everyday stuff, recognizing that we had a little gift at the end. It was going to be a nice dinner as we finished it out. So I think that's important as well as the environment. Look, again, these are some of the things I just kind of rolled off, and you had notes beforehand. The vision, mission, values for a business is very common. The output of this activity to have vision, mission, and values for generations to come as a family is very uncommon. And, just imagining what would be possible if we had that and it impacted generations to come. Not just the next generation with regards to a financial plan, which is normally happening, but 3 generations or 4 generations. One of the things I talked about in our preparation was generally, if we're lucky, God willing, we get to see kind of great grandchildren at some point in time in our lives here on earth. And that's usually best case where the legacy kind of ends in that 3rd generation. But imagine if it could travel through 4 generations by impacting those people. And so I think it's so, with the vision, I don't know if that fruit's going to come to bear or not. 4 or 5, we've actually written 10 generations into our vision statement, but we're going to start that process and just getting that started. Will it go on for 2, 3, 10 generations? I don't know, but I'm not going to wait around and find out if it's just going to go to 1. We're going to make that happen, and it's hard. Again, we have to be different.
So, John, for you, when you talk about 10 generations, you're there with your family. You no doubt ask them, and so what do we see at 10 generations? What do we see at 5? What were some of the comments when you put, 10 generations?
Yeah.
What are they?
What I was grateful for is that we prepped you that meeting before the meeting. That's so important. Like almost the first step to one of these is having your spouse with you and say, we're going to do this. That commitment, that decision by both of you. And again, when it's done out of inspiration, it can be so much more powerful. We drafted a draft vision statement, Chris and I did. And when we read that out to our sons at the meeting, they're like, that's pretty cool. And it was actually Joseph who said, what if it didn't say just generations, Dad? What if it said 10 generations to come, and that it changed the trajectory of lives for 10 generations? I'm like, slam dunk. Listen, absolutely. So I was so grateful that he dove in and added to that. And that's a great point. Like that trajectory of lives is what we talked about. People who are, tended to be negative, that they became positive and they moved in another direction. Or those that were kind of going okay, common, they're going a little bit, would actually go exponential on that curve. That trajectory went exponential. And they became leaders like they never thought they could be. That was the other picture of it, was the trajectory we drew. We drew an arrow that was down that went to the up as the vision, that it changed that, and then an up arrow that actually got steeper with regards to how both of those things are. So it was going to impact both of those types of individuals and families, which I just thought, and had nothing to do with financial or anything like that. It ultimately came down then leading us to the core values of what that really meant. Mm-hmm. To live out that vision. Just really good. It was really good.
Yeah.
Again, I could have made up all the bad stuff going in, and it was really good as the output. But I think that direction was the thing that was really cool.
Yeah, yeah. And you think 10 generations. Yeah, love it. Love it.
And that's you think about how our country is at 250 years. We're coming up on 250 years. That's about 10 generations. So that's going pretty far back, or going pretty far forward. The next 250 years.
That's right. Yeah. John, one thing that I think we should highlight that hopefully makes this sound a little bit less daunting is this vision and values. Let's just leave the mission out for a second. Mm-hmm. Vision and values. First off is you create these. It's not like you're going to go on to ChatGPT, Gemini, whatever the heck. Okay, family values. Oh, here they are. There we go, gang.
That's good. That looks good. Yep.
Yeah. So for us, it literally was, so we think about us as a family. What are some of the values that we think are common? 3x5 card again. And you get them all out there, and then you kind of group them and you talk about them. And so we ended up with 6, and then it's like, and so, gosh, if you had to write just a couple of phrases about how you would define this. Not go out onto the website or whatever. Again, how would we as a family define this? And you get all those, and you might ask a couple clarifying, non-leading questions, but we didn't wordsmith those in the moment. What we said is, hey, look, thank you very much. It's really cool stuff here. And Deb and I will take these cards for this value, and we'll come up with a definition from these cards and bring it back to you. And then you all can talk about what you might tweak, change. And that worked really, really well. And we had every card in, Excel spreadsheet that showed that their cards were still being thought of, and they could see their cards in that definition. So it wasn't like, we got your cards and toss them in the trash. No, they could see that evolution. And that was just, I think, very, very powerful. And we also told them that we're going to run with these for a year to a year and a half and then see if they're working for us. So it wasn't like they got to be perfect, because this is going to be 10 generations. No. Let's just get them down. Let's run them. And so every meeting now, we check in on those. So tell me, in the last 6 months, because we have our meetings every six months, in the last 6 months, how have those values shown up for you? And they say whatever they say. Right. But it just keeps bringing them back and bringing them back. And so I just wanted to share, again, don't get yourself trapped in this perfection. I got to get these values perfect. I got to get the definition perfect. No. Just get some stuff out there and let it evolve with your family. So,
yeah. And I love, you mentioned the timing as well. Like every 6 months, probably a good amount of time. It might change in the future, especially as families grow, it becomes even more challenging. But that's the intentionality. That's the commitment that needs to happen, just like you would in terms of getting your team together to do your annual, strategic plan. And I think about this because, listen, what a great time to quote check in. Yeah, we're always texting each other or on the phone once in a while with each other about how things are going, but this is a formal check in about how, in the last 6 months and the last year, what's gone well in terms of living those values out for us? Tell me a story about where that was and maybe where it didn't go so well for you. And helping each other through that. And I know we haven't touched on it because I think that, both with spouse and even in the group is that, and as individuals in facilitating, prayer is very important to understand that, ultimately leaders, if you're going to do this with your family, you're not going to do it perfectly. That's not what it's all about in doing it perfectly. It's about getting together and starting that process of the intentionality of building that family vision that will last for generations. You touched on it. Most businesses, only 3% of businesses, I think, was a data point you used, get to the fourth generation in terms of family-owned businesses. I mean, that's just shocking. It's certainly understandable, but I gotta believe one of the reasons that the families weren't aligned with those values and that vision of what was going to be there for the business. They may have talked about growth and getting it ready to sell and things like that, but not from the family standpoint. So I think is really, really powerful. Now, some folks are going to say, I just don't have the ability to facilitate that with my family. I've never done anything like that before. When is it okay maybe to bring a outside facilitator into that process, do you think, to help you through that journey?
I would say that you want to be present. So let's just say, that it's the father. You want to be present. And if I'd have been so consumed with getting it right and I didn't facilitate, on a regular basis, and the whole thing of clarifying non-leading questions and being able to truly not be passing judgment, not be taking it personally. I would want to believe, John, that I would put my personal ego on the sideline and bring in a facilitator. And I would be pretty rigorous about that choice. I would want to make sure that they were able to bring out the heart, because that's what's necessary. That's the legacy. It's not what do we do, it's who we are. And so that facilitator has to be skilled in getting to that. This isn't about building a resume, So it really is. You want someone that if it gets hot, if it gets heated, if they feel tension, if they feel insults going back and forth, they know how to handle that.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it's not laying down the law. It's usually being even gentler, even more inviting, listening even deeper, not being afraid of silence. So I think it really is a self-check. Is this something I'm familiar doing? Are these skills that I have? And even if I do I want to do this because I'm concerned I might not be present?
Mm-hmm.
Everyone in that room has to be present.
I think it's so good. I mean, we teach, again, on the other side, this comfort learning panic zone, if you will. And if it's a little bit of a self-fulfilling statement, but there's no pride in this statement. If you find yourself in the panic zone trying to facilitate an activity like that, reach out to us, contact us on LinkedIn, drop us a message. We'd be happy to, just do a call with you to talk through what that might look like and getting one of these started for yourself inside of a family meeting. So listeners, don't be afraid to reach out to us just to chat with us. But secondly, if you're looking for someone who that might be able to help facilitate a session like that, maybe we're someone that could be aligned. To your point, if some of our values line up, some of our process lines up, and knowing what the fruit can be, don't let the fear or the panic zone of not being a good facilitator keep you from getting into that arena, getting into that room. We know that journey. You have to be in the arena to make the work happen. And that's when the impact really starts. And the other side is, don't be afraid of arguments during these type activities. While we don't want that, there's emotion that comes up in some of these conversations, especially early on when you've not done anything like this before as a family. We've often referred to it as kind of getting a little blood on the carpet, if you will, but I can see breakthrough. And can these turn the other way in terms of going? That's why a great facilitator is needed, because you don't want them to turn in such a way that people just get angry and leave and it's not there. You got to be committed to it. You got to stay to it and really make it happen. Hey, I like how this conversation has gone. I like how it is going to continue to go. I mean, look, folks, having an estate plan, a wealth plan is very important, no doubt about it. To me, that's the price of admission. You want to take care of your children. Proverbs 13:22 highlights that a good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children, But that inheritance, I believe, inside of Proverbs with regards to wisdom is more than just financial. It's legacy in that space. So, Tom, I'm going to give you the last word. It's been a great conversation. We've actually overrun our time a little bit having fun with this, which is really good. And we could go on talking for hours, and we may end up doing that more in the future. But, to that leader out there who's really wanting to be present, wanting to have that kingdom impact, that long-term legacy, what's your kind of last word of advice that you would, put on maybe one of those 3x5 cards to get them started?
Don't let fear rule, because for me, fear holds me back, and fear is the enemy. The enemy doesn't want you to have these meetings. And, we have a couple of family members that I would say are not deep in their faith. And yet, let me just read you one of the definitions about love. So one of our values is love. It says, provide unconditional grace, compassion, gratitude for others and ourselves, no matter what. See what God sees in us. He created that definition. I didn't create it. And so even though, are they going to church on a regular basis? Are they reading the Bible? No, he was present. And so for me, even this call, it's like, I want to get this perfect. And you and I prayed beforehand, and we asked the Holy Spirit to come in and be here. And for me, I felt that. So don't let fear rule. Do not. There's just so much here of the heart, and the family needs the heart today more than ever. The family is not built by AI, man. It can't be. So it's like, let's go back to manual, let's get rid of the technology. Let's just go back to hugs, go back to being present, go back to listening and caring. And sometimes that can get scary, but you talked about transformation, you talked about inspiration, and those are all journeys of the heart. But John, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Love that. I totally enjoyed this conversation. Again, I know we could keep going on, but we don't want to lose all the listeners as well. Like, man, these guys just keep going on and on and on. We don't want to go to that space as well. I hope that we get a chance to hear from folks and chat with them about it. Certainly, here's the deal, folks. I mean, you know how this process works. There's someone in your life, if it's not you, which it may be you, who needs to hear this message, who needs to understand the power of that legacy for generations to come, the power of the impact that we can have that's not just financial. So I ask that you just share this conversation with them. Let them know what that is and see if we can get more listeners, not just to this episode, but ultimately get those leaders on an uncommon journey to transform and not just conform to the way things are today. If you've gotten this far inside of this conversation, I appreciate you listening all the way through, and I look forward to it. Until next time, go and grow champions.